Good evening, everybody. We begin tonight with a major national security development and the rising tensions between the United States and Communist China. The Federal Communications Commission today designated Chinese telecom companies Huawei and ZTE as national security threats. The FCC also barring U.S. telecom companies from using federal subsidies to buy equipment and services from those Chinese companies. FCC Chair Ajit Pai today saying that both Huawei and ZTE have close connections to the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army, adding that ZTE and Huawei are required to turn over data and information that they collect to Chinese intelligence. The FCC's designation comes as Beijing tightens control over Hong Kong, putting into effect a sweeping national security law that completes Beijing's takeover of Hong Kong. Hong Kong's leader, Carrie Lam, supporting that takeover and the end of civil rights in Hong Kong. Pro-democracy groups say this is the end to the Hong Kong the world once knew. On Monday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced the United States is stopping the exports of defense equipment to Hong Kong. The State Department also imposed the same restrictions on defense and dual-use technology. Last year, the United States exported more than $75 million of military equipment to Hong Kong, most of which was in the form of engines and turbines. $3.5 million, though, marked as tanks, artillery, missiles, rockets, guns, and ammunition. Secretary Pompeo said, quote, "We cannot risk these items falling into the hands of the People's Liberation Army, whose primary purpose is to uphold the dictatorship of the CCP by any means necessary." The Hudson Institute's Dr. Michael Pillsbury will be with us to take up China's rising ambitions and aggression. But first, our guest this evening formally designated Huawei and ZTE as threats to U.S. national security. His declaration, a major step toward removing national security threats from the United States. Joining us, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Ajit Pai. And Ajit, good to have you with us. It's been some time since we knew that both of these companies were turning over information that they gathered in the course of their normal businesses to the People's Liberation Army, to Chinese intelligence. Why this decision now?
Well, thanks for having me on, Lou. Unlike in communist China, we have the rule of law in this country. And in November of 2019, the FCC proposed to ban the use of FCC funding being used by telecom carriers here in the United States on problematic equipment or services coming from carriers like Huawei and ZTE. We initially proposed to designate Huawei and ZTE as national security threats, but we allowed everyone to make their case. We heard from the executive branch, we heard from Congress, we heard from other stakeholders, and we heard from Huawei and ZTE. The overwhelming weight of the evidence was suggested that Huawei and ZTE would be national security threats, and that's why we moved forward today with a firm designation to plant a flag to say that going forward, starting on July 1st, tomorrow, that USF funding overseen by the FCC, will not be allowed to be used by U.S. telecom carriers on equipment or services from these two companies, which do present a national security threat to the United States.
Is this effectively the beginning of pushing both of these companies out of the U.S. market?
That's a good question. All I will say is that we are looking at overall the security of our communications networks. Right now, we're talking about communications networks that are funded in part by the FCC. Last year, we also opened up a conversation about whether we should broaden that prohibition for equipment or services that are used by networks, even if they're not funded by the FCC. We've also been working with Congress on so-called rip and replace legislation to finance the removal of problematic equipment. To us, at least, the bottom line is no matter what company it is, what country that company is located in, if it's compromising the security of the United States' communications networks, that's not allowable. We will not allow that to happen on our watch.
So Huawei and ZTE are being barred as well, then, from access to the backbone of the internet, to our basic telecommunications infrastructure. Is that correct?
That's correct. So what we found was that these two companies, Huawei and ZTE, had ties to the Chinese Communist Party. had ties to the Chinese military apparatus, the People's Liberation Army. And in addition to that, they are obligated under Chinese law. If they get a request from the Chinese secret police, the intelligence services, they must comply with it, and they are prohibited from disclosing the fact of that request to any of their customers. So especially if you're talking about small rural carriers in the United States, it's not a risk that we believe is worth taking. That could allow for all kinds of intrusion, the installation of backdoors, the infection of our networks with malware, the theft of intellectual property. There are all kinds of risks that are simply not worth taking here in the United States, and I would argue elsewhere in the world.
And indeed, in terms of the rest of the world, Ajit, where does Europe stand? Where do our allies in the Pacific and Asia stand?
Well, I can tell you, based on my own personal conversations with some of my foreign counterparts, we've gotten a good response from many of our allies around the world. I've talked to folks from South America, Europe, and Asia, and I think that those conversations are starting to have traction. Recently, Singapore, for example, took a step with one of its major carriers to limit Huawei use installation of 5G equipment. Just yesterday, the Indian government banned 59 Chinese-based mobile apps, including companies like TikTok, from their networks altogether. I think there's a growing recognition around the world that the Chinese Communist Party presents a unique threat to communications networks. And here in the United States, we are sending a signal that we are not going to be able to tolerate that threat any longer.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Ajit Pai, Chairman of the Federal Communications Commission.